conversation focused on key takeaways from the Canvas, which is one of our favorite creations at Punchbowl News. It is our poll of senior Capitol Hill aides and K Street influencers in partnership with LSG. We hope you're enjoying the Punchbowl News HQ in Chicago. I built this space with my own no, I'm kidding. I had nothing to do with it, but our team did a great job in putting this together. Please grab a coffee at the GM Coffee Bar, get a cocktail at the Sazerac Bar as we dive into this great conversation. And as always, please share the conversation on social media. You can find Punchbowl News on all social media platforms at Punchbowl News. I'd like to welcome Philip Morris, a partner at LSG, to join me on stage. And that, just as a reminder, at the end of this conversation, we haven't done this yet. We didn't do it at the Republican convention, but we are going to take some audience questions. So please have a question in mind. And this is Philip Morris, and welcome him to the stage. So just a brief interlude on the Canvas, which LSG has been a partner with us from the beginning of Punchbowl News way back in 2021. We all had this crazy idea, LSG and us, of polling Capitol Hill influencers, because we know, and Philip has been so instrumental and LSG has been so instrumental in making this happen. Members of Congress are very smart people for the most part, but they don't make decisions alone. They make decisions in concert with aides, advisors, policy advisors, communications advisors, et cetera, et cetera. And we wanted to get to what we called the real decision makers, or some of the real decision makers on Capitol Hill. And the Canvas was our way to do that. And it is an anonymous survey. I should say that we expanded to K Street and downtown influencers as well. And so now we have kind of, Philip, you could talk about this for a second, but a very global view of decision makers in Washington, what they're thinking. And they've been, and you could talk about this more, they've been quite good. They've been quite predictive on issues both legislative, policy, and politics, right?
I think that's exactly right. You know, Jake, as you mentioned, this is first of its kind in the sense that there are others that have in the past tried or attempted to survey folks on Capitol Hill and K Street. And I think the challenges and why we were thrilled to partner with Punchbowl on this years ago is getting the most senior folks who truly drive and shape decisions that are made on the Hill. And so most of those polls have been mostly staff assistants and more junior and mid-level staff. The highest percentage of participation by role in our Capitol Hill survey are chiefs of staff on the Hill. And that just goes to underscore how all of the folks we're surveying, it's chiefs, it's LDs, it's comms directors, press secretaries, and staff directors. That's it. And we meticulously screen this and continue to grow this panel. And as Jake mentioned, doing this anonymously gives them license to be brutally honest about how they're thinking and feeling and what is and is not going to happen on the Hill. And I think the proof is in the pudding in that the accuracy and predictive nature of the Canvas, frankly, has even shocked me and I think all of us going into this. We looked at last cycle in 2022, some of the most competitive Senate races in that cycle. Capitol Hill correctly predicted 9 of the 9 most competitive Senate races. K Street correctly predicted 8 out of 9. And the one they got wrong was Nevada, which was the closest of all of those races. So the predictive nature is really there. I think even looking back to this same conversation Jake and I did at the RNC about a month ago, that was 2 days before Biden the last poll we conducted was 2 days before Biden jumped out of the race. And we had asked folks who was most likely to be the nominee, if not him, and overwhelmingly folks said that Harris would be the nominee, and obviously that's exactly what happened. So time and time again, I think the Canvas has proven to really have the pulse of what is and isn't going to happen legislatively, but also politically as we think about elections.
And I should add 2 more things. When Philip is not running the Canvas, he is a partner at LSG where he advises Fortune 500 companies and associations across industries and has conducted public opinion research across the U.S. and globally. And what we are doing at the conventions and what we did at the Republican convention and what we're doing here is we are conducting Canvas surveys here about what people are seeing at the convention. We did that in Milwaukee. We are doing it here. Philip, I should know this, but these folks might not, but how are we doing this?
Yeah, so every night, starting last night, when the last speech concludes, we are surveying both our Capitol Hill and our K Street panel. This is the only time that we actually survey both of those audiences simultaneously, asking the same set of questions, particularly for those folks who are tuned in and watching the conventions and what's happening. And our goal is really to understand the implications of what is happening at the conventions and what they think this means as far as influencing the outcome of the election. And so last night around 11 p.m., we had fielded our survey. Remarkably, by 6 a.m. this morning, we had over 100 responses. When we closed the survey around 11 a.m., I think we ended at 163 total responses. So we're doing this every night. The same will happen tonight. The same will happen tomorrow night. And the enthusiasm has really been remarkable in this short of a period of time, literally overnight, for folks to be either going to bed or waking up, taking the canvas, has, I think, really validated why this has been something of importance for folks. And as I said, the results have really translated well when we think about the impact that the conventions are having on the race.
And remember, it's a large number for a survey like ours, because we're not doing 1,000 people in Iowa. We're doing a small subset of the Capitol Hill and K Street universe. So, what has been the most interesting finding for you so far?
That's a good question. I think I'll answer this in the context of the conventions. And when we had polled at the RNC, I think one of the big surprises for us was just how tremendous the dissatisfaction was with J.D. Vance as the vice presidential nominee. I think right away, and keep in mind, this is when Biden was still in the race, and conventional wisdom at the time was that, well, this is Trump's race to lose. Biden's not really faring so well right now, and so the VP pick probably doesn't matter in any meaningful way. And even then, we saw about 80% of those canvass respondents say that they did not think Vance was the best pick that Trump could make to help him win the race. You fast forward now with Kamala Harris at the top of the Democratic ticket, and I think that frustration is even more pronounced. So I think there was a lot of wisdom shown by the panel in kind of how they interpreted what that would mean for the race. And I would say that was one of the big surprises, because I don't think the media narrative immediately upon selecting Vance was this was going to be harmful in any way to his campaign. And I think we've seen if Trump could do it all over again, he might be considering someone else.
And he might have been considering someone else. I think he was considering someone else. And reporting shows, and I've heard myself, that Trump has been asking people in his inner circle how they think J.D. Vance is doing. So Joe Biden spoke on Monday night. It's gotten a lot of attention as obviously an awkward situation, a situation that almost has no precedent, right? That a sitting president is passing the torch when he thought he was going to be running again. How effective, according to our canvass respondents, has that speech been in uniting Democrats behind Kamala Harris and also appealing to swing voters, which, to be clear, I don't think Donald Trump is doing very well at it all himself?
Yeah, so I think folks are viewing this in two different ways. In terms of Biden unifying the Democratic Party, the vast majority, 62% of our respondents, say that he was effective in unifying the party in his speech at the convention. Even when we segment this out by Republicans who were viewers of the convention and part of our panel and responded, a plurality, 41% of them, say he was effective, compared to 20% who say he was ineffective. So I think across the board, he's gotten passing marks as far as unifying the party. Now, when we ask about him broadening appeal to those moderate swing voters that decided the race, overall 40% say Biden was effective. So we're talking less than a majority. A plurality, still more, say he was effective than ineffective. And among Republicans who viewed his convention speech in our panel, 39%, almost 40%, say he was ineffective in appealing to those moderates. And I think that a lot of the commentary has been around his speech heavily focused on kind of the past and the list of accomplishments of the administration, maybe not as much on the future as folks had thought he was going to. And I think that is where maybe there was some missed opportunity to really bring more of those moderates into the fold as far as what that vision looks like for the future.
And you mentioned the dissatisfaction with J.D. Vance. But let's talk for a second about Kamala Harris's pick as vice president. This is a pick that was hotly contested, to say the least, in the shadow games of VP selection, and it obviously a truncated period of time to choose a vice president. And Kamala Harris went with Minnesota Governor Tim Walz, someone I covered for a long time in the House of Representatives, someone who I knew well. Do canvass respondents think that that was the right decision for Kamala Harris?
So respondents are really split and have mixed views on this. We had 47% say they disagree, that they do not believe that Walz was the best pick that Kamala Harris could have made, and 44% say they agree that that was the best pick. So there's a clear divide in terms of whether Walz was the best option among those out there that could have been on the ticket with her. When we look at our Capitol Hill audience specifically, a majority, 52% of them, say that they do not think that he was the best pick that she could have made. But when we look at just Democratic respondents, 65% say that they're satisfied and they do agree with that pick. So I would say she's done no harm here, but there clearly is a sense that there could have been a better option. And we have asked folks who would have been a better option if not Walz. And the resounding winner here is Josh Shapiro. And so whether or not that will prove to be a missed opportunity, I think we'll see how Pennsylvania shakes out.
Yeah, I wonder what you think, and I'm going to force you out of your comfort zone, or maybe it's in your comfort zone, but it's not in the canvas questions. But, you know, Josh Shapiro was a figure who he has 60-something% approval ratings in Pennsylvania. He won pretty convincingly a gubernatorial race just not long ago. I guess the argument that the Harris campaign would make is that we have a chance at winning Pennsylvania either way. Shapiro's going to help us win Pennsylvania. We want to take Walz, who is going to play better than Shapiro in Michigan, Wisconsin, and other places. I wonder how you view that.
Yeah, I think that's a perfectly legitimate strategy. Right?
Okay.
I mean, the notion that Walz has appeal in a lot of those other swing states, there's no question about that. I think in the speeches last night, you saw a concerted effort to even play that up. I think Obama made the joke about his flannel shirts, and there's this.
I like flannel shirts, so I'm fine with that.
There's this. He's the everyman, and I think that that's really the image that they're looking to portray in those middle America swing states that are going to be crucial. I think, however, with Pennsylvania, should Harris win Pennsylvania, there'll be no regret whatsoever as far as this VP selection. But should they narrowly lose Pennsylvania, I think there will always be the question mark that could it have helped to give him an even more prominent role on the trail and as the face of the campaign.
Yeah, I guess the question is how effective is he at bringing out Pennsylvania voters as not the vice presidential candidate, but just a surrogate? And I guess that's an unknowable answer, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's move on. Several Democrats spoke. We've had a long list of prominent Democratic folks, surrogates, elected officials speak, and several spoke obviously last night and the night before and are speaking tonight. How did their speeches land, and did any of our survey respondents think that a specific speaker made the most impactful case for Harris and Walz?
So as far as the speeches over the last two nights, the clear winner in terms of impact has been Michelle Obama and Barack Obama, last night's speakers. 64% of our canvass respondents chose Michelle Obama as one of the two most effective speakers of the last two nights. 58% chose Barack Obama. What's fascinating here, when we segment this out by Democrats and Republicans in our panel who responded to the survey, 73% of Democrats say that Michelle Obama was most effective. Even 20 points more say she's effective than Barack Obama's speech was. With Republicans who responded, 65% say that Barack Obama was more effective than Michelle Obama was. And I think it's funny because if you look at the substance of their speeches and what they were trying to achieve, I think Michelle Obama, certainly the mantra, when they go low, we go high, kind of went out the window last night. And I think that
was so 2016. Didn't work in that election. So,
and I think she really took the gloves off and went after Trump. And I think For the Democratic base, that's exactly what they were looking for, and especially coming from her, that was so powerful and effective. I think Barack Obama's speech hit more on policy, and I think that that's where Republicans, if you even look at some of I think thematically the convention they ran, there was an effort to really try to pin down and attack Democrats on policy, and I think that they had to view Obama's challenge to that as a more effective strategy, given I think that they focused, at least their convention, not their candidate, because Donald Trump obviously is talking about anything other than policy right now as it relates to Kamala Harris. But at their convention, the focus was heavily on policy, and especially policies that we know Democrats are vulnerable on, like immigration.
What do you think made what you mentioned some of it, but what is Obama and the former president and former first lady are incredibly gifted orators and political figures. I wonder if it's my theory. I wonder if you share this. Is that they are just? It feels like it was a two-term presidency. It almost feels like the party is coming home to a certain degree. Is that what you think the dynamic is? Why people are attracted to them as a pair, or why they were attracted to them last night?
I think so, and I think that the party has been really wise to use them as sort of a moral compass. And I think you saw that throughout Michelle Obama's speech, really appealing to, and I think very much going after swing voters of, I don't care whether you agree or disagree on every single issue. There is a profile of what someone ought to be that is deserving of the highest office in this land. And her argument in her case is that Donald Trump is not that, and that we've seen that and don't need to go there. So I think that moral compass argument, which is trying to avoid divisive issues that maybe a swing voter isn't perfectly aligned with the Democratic Party on, I think that's a very effective strategy that she's deployed, and I think others will continue to throughout this convention.
And I think part of it, if I could add to that, which was interesting to me, is they almost flipped the argument from where Biden was, which was Biden was very much positioning this as, a fight for the soul of our country. And Obama, I don't know if this was conscious or not, effectively said, you don't give this guy too much credit, Trump. He's like your annoying neighbor with the leaf blower. We could send that neighbor home for good, is effectively what his message was. And I found that interesting. We are nearing the end of my questions, so get your questions prepared, or else I'll start calling on people and quizzing people as to what Philip and I said.
Jake, just one thing I want to add quickly on speeches, because we had another fascinating result here. I think Michelle and Barack Obama, everyone knew were going to deliver some high-powered speeches, but of the list of folks that we provided, which was exhaustive, two that I want to note, AOC actually, among Capitol Hill staff, ranked third in terms of having the most impact of any speech over the last two nights, and I thought that was a really notable call-out, particularly given her policy positions, one of the most effective communicators still within the Democratic Party. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't note that Joe Biden, only 5% in our panel, said that he was one of the most effective speakers. And I think that shows you, the need to look back, and the thank you for his first term certainly inhibited the ability that he could have had, I think, to be a bit more forward-looking in terms of what his first term means for a next opportunity in Kamala Harris.
I think if I could add some commentary to that, I think, number one, AOC is clearly one of the most talented communicators in the Democratic Party, number one. Number two, I think Capitol Hill staffers tend to look on someone from the Hill with favor, let's say. And I think part of it with Biden, I'm curious if you agree, I think people are just looking to move forward, and I think they're not terribly receptive to. They might appreciate him, but I don't know that they're receptive to his message right now at this point in time. Is that fair?
I think that's fair. The only thing I will say, I still don't think it discounts that Biden had a bigger opportunity than he took to be more forward-looking.
That's probably right.
Yeah, and that's what was advertised as far as what his speech was going to be. And I think that there was a bit of a letdown because not enough of the focus was on the future and Kamala Harris.
Okay, we are about to get to audience questions, but I have one more question of my own, if I could get my papers in order. Election is, I think we said this morning, 76 days away, 75 days away. How effective do our respondents, do canvas respondents, think Harris has been on the campaign trail? I mean, this is a sprint in a way that I don't think we've never seen in American politics. We see it in European politics quite frequently. How effective has she been on the trail?
Yeah, so this was another notable result in our survey. The overwhelming majority, 86%, say that they believe she's been effective on the campaign trail. And the most notable of that is when we segment out Republicans in our panel who responded, 70% of Republicans say that they think that she has been effective on the campaign trail. And so I think that clearly illustrates she is winning the sprint. The question will be, can she win the race?
Okay, opening it up for questions. I'm going to start calling on people, and usually all it takes is one person. Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I'm short too. So.
Hi, I'm Tizzy Brown. I'm wondering if your polling shows, or if either of you just have gut checks on this, if there are any lesser-known speakers that we've seen so far that have maybe made a name for themselves in the last couple days?
I have an idea. I don't know that it's in our polling, but I'll tell you who I think. No one is obscure, right? Because these are all federally elected or statewide elected officials or otherwise elected officials. I thought Jasmine Crockett had a big moment. Some Jasmine Crockett fans in the audience. Someone that's well known to us, and I think the Canvas community and the Capitol Hill community, the Punchbowl News community. But I thought that was somebody who was had a breakout moment of sorts. I will be, Wes Moore is somebody, I think he's speaking tonight. I think he's going to be someone that a lot of people are watching and has the potential for that.
Yeah, I think Jasmine Crockett's a good one. The only one I'll cite, and this person is certainly known, but they're a newer member of Congress, is Warnock. Warnock was very effective. Among our panelists, about 10%, but 20% of folks on the Hill, he actually ranked fourth just behind AOC in terms of impact and effectiveness in his speech. And so I think Warnock is one who certainly continued to build his profile, and I think clearly has the opportunity to be a force within the party.
Other questions? Yes, ma'am. I'll tackle that. Yeah, sorry, I will repeat the question. The question is, I'll just summarize it quickly. What is the balance between having a lot of policy that you lay out in a campaign and having no policy or limited policy that you lay out in a campaign? A few thoughts right now. The Harris campaign has been, I think, for the last couple of weeks since it started, I mean, it's only been in existence for a couple of weeks, has been coasting on good vibes, and rightfully so, right? Yesterday, it was reported that they raised $500 million since she got in the race. That is an incredible amount of money. So on one hand, whatever she's doing is working quite well. On the other hand, not laying out policy is just something that they're going to whack, that the Trump campaign's going to whack her on. Now, I think that the idea in a campaign is to show a vision and not to get into what you think the top marginal rate should be, and maybe that is an important distinction, but there is a balance between vision and between nitty-gritty policy. And as somebody who has been on Capitol Hill for the last X years, covering for the last 15 years, what campaigns oftentimes promise on policy in a campaign, frequently those things don't become reality. So I think that's the balance that she has to strike. But I imagine that that'll become clearer in at least one debate that the vice president has with President Trump. And I think you might get a little bit more of it tonight or tomorrow night when she speaks. Cool.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. My experience has been doing plenty of political polling over the years. Candidates and campaigns especially win elections, not policy. And so I think that the campaign has been very wise to steer away from that. I mean, if we just look back to Biden defeating Trump, he didn't defeat Trump on policy per se. He defeated Trump with this moral argument of we're in a battle for the soul of our nation. And that was good enough for most voters to say, okay, I'm ready for a different direction. And so I think the Harris campaign has been very clever to figure that out here, that they're not going to win and score points by getting into overly detailed policy minutia. And I think if you look at the speeches even over the last 2 evenings, they have not been overly policy ridden. They have not been very specific or prescriptive. And I think that's intentional. And I think that recent history has dictated that is a winning strategy.
Yes. Yes, sir.
You didn't poll this, but I'm just curious what your thoughts are. I thought the greatest flex and show of strength last night was Milwaukee. I mean, we had more people in that audience than Trump did, and those were all Wisconsin voters. And I thought that definitely unnerved them. And yeah, crowd size does matter.
Yeah, I think a few things. I think a lot of this, especially with Trump, is mind games, right? I mean, a lot of the stuff gets under his skin. You could see it getting under his skin in real time. He suggested that a rally, obviously, that dozens of our colleagues in the press were at was AI generated. I do think it was a very smart flex. I think, and piping her and him in live from there was smart, and especially in a state like Wisconsin, right, Philip? I mean, that's a hell of a message.
I think that was a brilliant moment of political theater that I think...
And by the way, campaigns are mostly theater.
Exactly. And this goes to my point. This is not going to be won or lost on policy per se. And I think that, Jake's point about getting under the skin of the opposing campaign, that's what it was designed to do. There's no question that it did. And then you saw the speakers that evening even continue to build on that and point out the whole crowd size fascination and the like. So,
including Barack Obama, yeah. Okay, we have time for one more question. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Victoria Hofstetter, and I was wondering if your canvas offered or provided any insights on the Republican speakers that attended the DNC, and if people had any positive or negative reactions to that.
So that's my favorite question that we've been asked, because one of the things that we routinely do is we want feedback from folks around what we could be exploring. And I am literally going to be messaging my team after this saying we need to add a question to ask exactly that. So
who was the most effective? Great. And by the way, speaking of mind games, having former President Trump's press secretary, Melania Trump's former chief of staff, on stage is quite the mind game from the Harris campaign. Philip, we are all out of time, and we are the only people standing between this audience and a larger audience and an ice cream social. So unless you're going to start serving scoops up there.
I won't compete with that.
A reminder, we will be hosting this ice cream social in just a few minutes in partnership with Snapchat. Afterwards, we'll have John Hickenlooper, Senator from Democrat from Colorado, on stage with our very own Andrew Disterio, our own master of the Senate, at 4 p.m., followed by a toast to the DNC. We hope everyone will stick around. More people are coming. Have fun. Enjoy.